I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land in which we meet today. I would also like to pay my respects to the elders past and present. Welcome back to another episode of the Project Life podcast. Today we are diving into the creative process with an absolute brilliant multidisciplined artist who has studied fine arts through university, a life model for art groups throughout Sydney, has her own business providing marketing, design and creative consultation, and who will be sharing with us her journey through the arts. Shannon Alice, welcome. Thank you for coming today.
Thanks for having me. It's an absolute privilege to be able to speak to you today about creativity, which is obviously my favorite subject. So.
Yes, that's why we had you on, because we know how good you are at it.
Yeah, thanks.
So today's, like I mentioned off air, it's going to be a little bit about sharing your journey and your story with us. So maybe we should go back to the start. How did you find your creative spark and that you had a talent for art? Where did that all begin?
Yeah, so it started in year 11. It was really a profound light bulb moment. For my HSC, I took art instead of legal studies, which is what my mum wanted me to do. There was a clash.
That probably would have been my preference, just to say.
Legal studies. I mean, I loved it. I was really academic. I had really academic upbringing. So to pick art was really going against what was expected of me. But I just felt like it was something that I needed to do. I was going through a lot of stuff at the time. I had really bad anxiety, really struggling with mental health issues. I had eating disorders. My family life was falling apart. So there was a lot going on at the time. And taking art was more an act of rebellion, I guess. It was my self standing up and saying, this is what I want to do. This is a choice I'm making for myself.
It was more of a rebellion for you than anything with everything going on.
Yeah, and I remember my first lesson, my art teacher walked in and she's wearing this fluffy orange jacket and, it looks like she's like skinned a Muppet and like wearing this thing. And I just had never seen or been like exposed to women being so expressive and loud. I grew up in an environment where like women served men, like really religious. My role is to be a mom and a wife and a
stay at home.
Yeah, exactly. I support my husband and he does the stuff. And so seeing this woman like walking in and being this like dynamite was one thing that that was the first step that kind of made me think, what is this art world? And then the first lesson that we had, she sort of sat everybody down and said, I just want you all to do a really simple line drawing of your hand. So you look at your hand and you don't take your pencil off the page and you just draw a continuous line drawing. And I hadn't really drawn that much before. So I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll just do this. And she just kind of walked around and I remember her saying, oh, so you can draw really well. And I was like, I can draw really well? What?
Really?
Like, really? Yeah.
I'm really here to rebel against my parents and I can do it.
I can do this. And I just had no knowledge of that, or I didn't realize that beforehand. There was no, it was really profound discovery of some secret aspect of myself that I didn't know existed beforehand.
So the school system's good for something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. This teacher changed my absolute life.
Yeah, for sure.
She just, it's I love hearing the stories when people are like, what's the one teacher that had a profound impact on you? And it was her. Like she was incredible. And that was like the first lesson. And then the first project we ever did for art in that like first semester was to do a self-portrait. So it was a real opportunity to explore yourself.
Yeah.
And the way that she did it was so incredible. Like, she just was so invested in helping you. I don't know if she did it for everybody or if I just like gravitated towards this,
Yeah.
but she introduced me to artists who were struggling with their own mental health issues, or struggling with like these tortured kind of experiences. So Frida Kahlo was one of them who she introduced me to. Egon Schiele, who has like these incredible portraits that he draws of himself, also has aspects of like sensuality, sexuality in his works. Frida Kahlo as well, like exploring the body, exploring herself, her like experiences with her body, like and then I like looked at Gustav Klimt as well, and like his beautiful patterns, and like it's still like within that emotional experiences and surrealism, a lot of surrealism, a lot of symbolism. But like these key artists, like the first artist that she ever introduced me to, that resonated so much with my own story and self-discovery. And then the painting that I painted was such a powerful process of self exploration, like exploring who I am as a person. And then it ended up being accepted into an exhibition that was hung at the National Portrait Gallery in Canberra.
Oh, wow.
Like,
Amazing.
yeah, the first painting that I really had ever painted. And it was such a profound experience of, I think this is what I'm meant to be, or there is this process, or art is giving me freedom and allowing me to live my life and discover who I am, not who I am as a daughter, not who I am as being told what to do by society, by religion, by my parents, not having autonomy of self thought even before that time. Art was like an escape, or a key to freedom, or a realization that I was my own person, and I had never had that before. And especially autonomy over my body, which was a huge thing, because growing up quite religious, like my clothes had to be like acceptable, the way I looked, the way I acted, appropriate. Everything had to be appropriate.
Yeah.
And then this art teacher and her like wild clothes, her wedding ring was tattooed on, and like,
That's my
yeah,
girl.
she
Yeah.
like
Awesome.
just phenomenal. She was like the first step into knowing that my body belonged to me and no one else.
Yeah.
Which
is very important.
Oh my God.
That is so important.
I didn't know that beforehand. I didn't know that. And it took me a very long time to even, it's like I touched on it during this period, and then I lost the knowledge of that as I went into, I got married really young. I had kids really young.
Yeah.
And the relationship was very traditional in the sense that the expectations were to be a stay-at-home wife and like support the family. And so
I remember when I first met you, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember Holly Eva,
yep,
beautiful artist. You and her got along very well.
yep,
And I remember someone recounting this story to me where she was like, you're like, oh yeah, I can draw. And then she looked at your artwork and was like, yeah, you can draw. Like, dude, you can draw. Look at this. Like something like that. Like, I've just got this recollection. I remember, like, I had no idea that you were an artist, but I remember it must have been either yourself or Holly telling me that story. And it was kind of like a boost of confidence to you. And then I just remember you then starting to share your art a lot more. Like, you had your art hanging up in the bakery, and I've still got your artwork that I bought. I just fell in love with.
yeah,
I've got it upstairs. I already know where I'm putting it in my new house.
yeah.
But I just remember like seeing that whole process from you when I first met you, and
Yeah.
you had helped me with my small business back then, doing all the creative side of it all and coming up with logos and website and all that stuff as well.
Yeah.
So from school and from all that, did you know that you wanted to continue with the art path?
Yeah.
And how did you then find yourself, like, you're doing all these multiple disciplinary types of art?
Now I am. Yeah.
So how did they all come to be, and what was your career, I guess, outside of school? And I say that in quotation marks because
Yeah.
you do it for the love and the passion as well.
Yeah. So it's been a journey of betrayal. I
Okay, wasn't what I was expecting.
yeah, so definitely a betrayal of the self, and not something I would say, like, I struggle a lot with self um love, I
Yeah.
would say. So even talking about the journey through my art is I have shame about, because I do feel like I betrayed myself, but you do what you can with what you have at the time. So
Mm.
um I stopped making art for a really long time when I
Mhm.
was married. Um, when you have kids, and I had them really young, I had a
Mm.
lot of responsibility and to be a wife and a mom, and it's really hard to juggle. It's still hard to juggle. My kids are teenagers. It's still really hard. And so I didn't make art for a really long time. I just wasn't in an environment where it was uh, possibility to do that.
How did
And
that make you feel? Like you'd just come from school, had found this another side of self, something
yeah,
that really deep inside you that you loved and the expression that you had. And then your life had developed and changed and that kind of faded away. Did you feel like a loss or a grief
yeah.
for your art and that process?
I think that it eats away at your soul, whether or not you are aware that it's
Mm.
eating away at your soul. And probably is one of the reasons why I am divorced. Like, I would say, like, the marriage broke down. It had a lot of reasons why on both
Mm.
sides, as you know, these things
They
do.
happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And but I would say that, as I always knew that my life felt unlived, unfulfilled, like you're living life for other things or other people or other priorities, and I still feel that to a degree now.
Mm. Which is also kind of, I guess, some part of society. What my take would be some part of society in knowing that you have to make money to put a roof over your head and put food on
Yeah,
your table, otherwise you could be yourself 100% of the time and you wouldn't have
exactly.
that
Oh my
obligation, would
God,
you?
to be a lady of leisure who could just paint all day long. Yeah, so, and that's exactly right. So you had all of these other things that I needed to do, and but every year that went by was a little bit more of my soul had died, and it was like putting a plant in a cupboard, and
Mm.
you're not nourishing it, you're not living.
Not
You
letting
know
it
that
grow.
something's missing. You know that you're something in your life is missing, and the longer it went on, the more sick I became,
Yeah.
and not and obviously I had struggled with mental health issues a long time, but um, the situation that I was in at the time as well was quite um, challenging and unhealthy, and it got worse. My eating disorder got worse. I was losing a lot of weight.
Mm.
I was really sick. I wasn't able to be the kind of mum that I wanted. And towards the end of and that whole family situation became very bad. My mental health became really bad as well. And I had a full mental breakdown when I was 29. And the only thing that saved me was art and making art. So during that period, that's when I moved to Appen.
Yeah.
In the last few years of my 20s, moved to Appen, met Holly, met everybody who was really creative, and it was meeting another woman called Julia as well, who was the minister's wife at the time. She actually bought me a notepad and pencils, and I sat down at the table when I first started doing art with the hand drawing.
Wow.
And that's how I started making art again, and when I moved to Appen. And she was the catalyst to start art again. And then I started creating like the chalk drawings. And I met Holly, and then that's kind of where those conversations had come up, like, oh, I can draw, and yeah, you can draw. And then you start meeting these creatives, and the biggest thing I find, like, to over and over and over again, being able to live a fulfilled life is community. It's who you're surrounded by, and community and belonging. It's the defining factor between whether you succeed or not succeed. And by success, I mean are able to get up every day and say, okay, I can face the day again. Is your community that's around you. So the people and my friends and the connections that I had, those were the ones who helped me survive a very dangerous mental breakdown. It reintroduced me to make art, introduced me to the art scene again, helped me connect with exhibition spaces, galleries. That's where the connections with burlesque scene came in. It's where I started Life More, and that's where I started performing. So
where did you, with your art, like you said, you had a painting in the exhibition when you were in year 12.
Yeah.
You've touched on drawing and chalk, but what were the different medias of art that you had explored in those early days before we continue on further to what you're doing now?
Yeah, so it was always painting, was predominantly self-portraiture. So always art very quickly, very early on, became a process of self-discovery, self-exploration, and self-healing.
And that's where a lot of your paint, your influence, your creativity came from within.
Yes, always from within.
And that's why it's around a lot of portraits.
And still is. Still everything I do mostly is about self-exploration, self-portraiture. The subconscious mind is a big part. Even the first portrait that I did that got hung up in the gallery it's called The Mask and the Depressant, and it's about the face that we put forward to the world, this perfect, amazing, I'm so fine, everything's fine, I'm fine. And then the opposite of the extreme, and like the depressed, like decaying soul underneath that is like so sad all the time, this slowly dying little aspect. And somewhere in between, are these two masks, almost, these two aspects of ourselves, which are ourselves but also not who we are as well. And somewhere we sit in this invisible in between. And so that was exploring, these two polar opposites of who I was at the time. And the parts that we hide and the parts that we show, and sometimes parts we hide, other parts that we show. But that what's happening underneath the surface, the emotions, the feelings, the thoughts, what's driving all of this, that's always kind of still is core to my art process now, even.
And you just touched on then before, that's where you got into burlesque and everything. So from meeting this new network of people, kind of building anew from what you've just gone through for those years prior. Chalk, paint, and then burlesque. Where was burlesque? How'd that come into me?
So it through meeting Holly, we had an ex in Wollongong.
I do remember that.
And I did a lot of chalk. I did chalk pastel drawings of my friends, all nude, and an animal that represented or symbolized, their totem animal, or represented who they were. So the nude body was still a really key part of my performance, for my exhibition, my art practice. Through her as well, connected to a art exhibition sort of company that puts on these big expos, like basically creative expos, and you can go and have performance, have spaces there to exhibit. And so I did that. I had a couple of those exhibitions and met the person who was running that at the time was also a producer of burlesque. So, and I didn't know I had no connection to burlesque, didn't even know what it was. And also during the time I had met a photographer amazing photographer, and this was all kind of happening concurrently. So I had my divorce process had just started. I had just come through a very terrifying mental breakdown. So it lasted about 6 weeks of very bad panic attacks every single night, and I'd end up in hospital like a lot of the time. Also with very like small kids, very difficult life, family situation that was unfolding. So there's a lot of emotional stuff happening, a lot of self-hatred of my body. So I was very underweight, but thought I was overweight, and thought nobody could possibly love me. A lot of like desire to be loved, but no self-love. A lot of external validation needed, but no. I was really at a bad place. And one of the things that happened with the breakdown is that I'll go into that a bit later because it's jumping around a bit. It doesn't make too much sense. But so the context is that I didn't love myself and I didn't love my body, and I thought nobody could possibly love me. And then I was invited by the producer of the burlesque show who had been producing the art exhibition. They didn't have a front of house for their burlesque production that was happening. And we'd become friends, and she's like, I just need you to come down. Don't worry, we've got a costume for you.
I was going to say, did you get all dressed
up? Well, I didn't know anything about it. I didn't even have a context to put my head around what it was. I had no idea.
What, you didn't hear burlesque?
No, nothing. I had no idea. No, nothing.
Oh, wow. Did you get blown away when you walked in there?
I was like, what the heck is this? I had no context. I had no idea. And I just knew before I went that I had a choice and my life was going to change. Just a feeling in the soul, right? That I either go down this path and I go to that event that night, or I stay home and be a stay-at-home mum, and my life will
just continue
as it was.
Yeah.
Which is fine if that's what you feel like your calling is. I 100% embrace it. But for me, I knew that a huge part, there's something very big that was missing, and it was very difficult for me to even go to this event, because I had 2 young kids. I had to organize so much stuff.
Yeah. As you do, you can't just walk out the door.
Exactly, you can't. Yeah. So it was a big thing to have to try and push to go. And so I knew in my soul that if I didn't go, my life would, it just was like this feeling inside, like I have to go to this thing.
Yeah.
And so I ended up going, and I ended up doing my hair in this vintage style, without really, I guess, knowing too much about why.
Yeah.
And then I got to the event, and they're like, okay, so this is your costume. And I'm like, it's my what now? And it was like a G-string and a corset and fishnet stockings. And I was like, excuse me? What? I just,
It's, and for someone who has no idea what burlesque was, who had no self-love, it would have been quite quite a slap in the face. Wow, throw you in the deep end.
It was absolutely being thrown in the deep end. And I remember going into this closet, because burlesque never has a back room. There's never a green room for burlesque. It's always a toilet or a closet or some cupboard somewhere. But I remember going into like this kind of like change roomy closet thing, and I put on the costume, and I remember standing there thinking, oh my God, like I don't know what I'm doing. People are gonna, I can't go out. I'm disgusting. I can't, this is like next level. How can I walk out in like this? And then at some point you just have to jump. Like you just have to dive in. And I just had to walk out. Like there was nothing. I was the thing with events and performances is that there's no delay. Like the show starts at some point and you, you have to walk out on the stage.
The show must go on.
The show must go on. At some point it clicks over to 7:00 and you walk out because people are walking in and you have to be there. Like you don't, it's like this countdown and it's like terrifying, and it's still terrifying to this day. I have the worst stage fright and the worst anxiety backstage. Like people have to like leave me alone or give me a hug. Like they're
the two options.
Yeah, exactly. Like I just cannot cope. And it was a profound moment, and then I just did it. And then I hadn't even seen burlesque at that point. And I remember walking out I was doing the front of the house and greeting everybody and getting photos, and everyone's like, oh my God, you're so beautiful. Oh my God, you're so beautiful. I was like, what? Who are they looking at? Who are they talking to? Like, it was such a like disconnect in my mind. It was like my teacher saying like, oh my God, you can draw. Like, what is this world? Like, who are they talking about? Who are they looking at? And it was such a like weird confidence boost, and not egocentric, but like this like, what, this doesn't correspond to what I tell myself every day. Like, this is making me think. And then I saw the girls perform, and I still like good friends with like one of the girls I watched that night. Her name's May Delarue is what her performance name is, and just incredible. And she did this performance, and I was like, oh my God, who are these women who are standing on stage, embracing their bodies, owning their bodies? People are cheering for their bodies. They own the cheers for their bodies. If people don't cheer for them, they're not taking off their clothes. They're not doing anything. Like they own the audience. They own the stage. They own their bodies. And I was like, oh my God.
Absolute awe.
Absolute awe. And I was like, I want to be one of those women. I want to love and own. I want to own my body like they own their bodies. I want to love my body like they love their bodies. I want that.
Yeah.
And that was it. That defined everything moving forward to this day. And
so how long did you do burlesque for?
So I still, I would say that I never really did proper burlesque. I just was allowed to perform at burlesque shows, and I did my own thing. So
this is the performance art.
Yeah. And I've only ever really, I've had some exhibitions that I've put on myself or organized with galleries, or had amazing people who have helped organize them, who I'm super grateful for. Again, like community is everything in the art world. So the first performance was all through the connections with burlesque. So it started, the girls who were at that night became friends. I became friends with. One of them worked at the Art House hotel in the city, and they run a Monday night life drawing group. And I had mentioned that, when I was at art school, I always wanted to be a life model, but, never could. And then I got married and it wasn't a thing that I was able to do. And, now I've got kids and I've had kids and my body is so saggy and blah, blah. And then the woman who worked at the art house at the time, she called me up one day and she's like, oh, our life model's cancelled for the night. Can you come in, fill in, and just life model?
That would be my worst nightmare. That would be my worst nightmare for sure.
It was this moment where it's like either
I have to do this.
Yeah, I take this path or I never take this path. Like, this is it. And I was like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll do it. And like terrified in
Yeah.
myself, but at some point you've got to jump, right? And I'd had 2 kids. I hated my body. I was downstairs. It was when the art house was downstairs. I had in the now they've turned it into like a gaming room, but downstairs used to be this big open space. It was full of people. Like there must have been like, I don't know, 40, 50 people in there, like it packed. And I was like, yeah, I'm a professional life model, obviously.
So again, were you like this closet out the back, put on a robe, and then you come out and just drop the robe and just stand there? And,
Yeah,
what's the
up
process for
until
you
so
getting out there?
yeah, you get changed and you're in a dressing gown and you climb up onto the stage in the middle of this room, and I still remember it to this day. I'm wearing this dressing gown. The clock is ticking closer and closer to like 6 o'clock. I have to jump. I remember sitting there and I'm like, okay, so there's no backing down now. You just have to drop the rope. Like, this is it. They're either going to boo and walk out of the room, which 100% like was like a fear of mine. They're going to be horrified and leave the room because you like have saggy boobs because you've breastfed, or it's just going to be okay. And you don't have a choice now. Like whatever's going to happen is what's going to happen, and you just have to deal with it.
Yeah.
Go
with it. Yeah.
And what happened was I stood up, I dropped the cloth, everyone was silent, picked up their paper and started drawing. It was a nothing event. They just got on because
it was all in your head.
It was all in my head.
It was
just this huge anticlimactic normality of life. I was like, oh my God, like, and then you just start, and then I just started modeling. And then at the end, they were like, the most profound things happened for me and have always happened from then on is that they started saying, these artists who have seen me naked, completely 100% naked, have looked at my body in a way that nobody has ever looked at my body before, have watched me for 2.5 hours, every crevice, crack, shadow, roll, wrinkle, everything, visibly looked at my body, and the way they described me was, you have such strength. You hold yourself with such strength. You are such a strong person. You exude such strength. And I was like,
that's amazing.
Who are you talking about? I have no strength. I'm this weak, scared, anxious, little weak person. What are you? The words they use, like, you're so dynamic, you're so strong, you're so whatever. And these words were words that described somebody that I didn't know. And yet the words described my soul, my essence, my presence. Not once did they describe, you've got a beautiful leg, you've got a beautiful ass, you've got beautiful boobs, and that's always been an absolute disconnect, or that's the distinction between mainstream society and the art world that I have always lived that from that point on. If I go on a date, if I'm around mainstream society, you will always be described by your physical appearance. Oh my God, you're so beautiful. Oh, you look great today. Oh, what did you do with your hair?
I guess that's also when you look at, nude photos or photographies or drawing, where the line goes from porn to art.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Yeah.
Like you could look at an image and the way that you perceive that, whether it's art or whether you see it as porn.
Yeah.
It's
Is this a sexual object for me to enjoy, or is this
something so much deeper and more meaningful? Like you said, the courage, the strength, and seeing that soul and that beauty, and just the whole, just the way they described you. That's awesome. That's amazing. How did you feel after that?
It absolutely changed my idea of myself and the acceptance of my body. My eating disorder started to fade away. I stopped weighing myself every day. I stopped, my self-love started to come, and I started to think, if these people who have seen my soul, if these people look at me and see my soul, and this is how they're describing me, then maybe there's a part of my soul that I don't know about. And so I
Yeah.
started to explore it and consider it, and started to listen to them more than I listened to normal mainstream society and the messages that we get, especially as mothers who have stretch marks and saggy boobs. I didn't have piercings at the time because I didn't feel like I was beautiful enough to have piercings. And I always thought, oh, I'll get nipple piercings after I have a boob job, because then my boobs will be good enough to have nipple piercings. And then I realized that actually my boobs are beautiful right now. And nobody has complained. Nobody's walked out of a life modeling session because I had saggy boobs. Like, nobody cares. They just want a really good life model to draw. And then I went and got my nipples pierced, and I was like, fuck you, society. I have beautiful boobs. And so it was a real process of self-acceptance. And at the time as well, that I started to discover that I wasn't an ugly bridge troll who
Caught me by surprise.
like this really bad self view of myself. I
So you started becoming, I guess, a bit more of yourself.
Yeah.
Just again through that discovery process, trying the burlesque and the life modeling and seeing, oh my, I'm strong.
I'm strong.
I'm amazing. I'm beautiful. All these kind of things that you hadn't thought
believed
were you.
And adjectives or descriptive words. What's a vowel? What's a noun? I don't know.
That's an adjective.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
I'm an artist. I'm not an English teacher. So all of these descriptive words that were about who I was as a person, but not about my physical appearance, but were in response to my physical appearances or my performances. So it was such a incredible experience of not being an object whilst also being an object. It was so incredible, the way that the art world, or the way that creatives, or the way that artists see you.
Their perception is so different.
It's so different. And it's like
you could have all 40 of them in the room and everyone would see something completely different.
Yeah.
But
and none of them see you as like this. I mean, they might, but the art scene or the art world is so different to normal society. Like,
I feel like it's a lot more supportive.
So supportive.
Just from what you're saying, like, if you're in normal society, the haters and the trolls,
and the judgment, and you have to meet this standard, or you have to do this, or you have to be this, or you have to be that. But
whereas they just seem to be so accepting.
Yeah.
Of everything is who you are.
Yeah, it's about who you are and not what you look like.
Yeah.
And that was so different for me. It's really the first time. Every time I've touched the art world or I've come back into the art world, it's a real understanding of that I'm more than what I look like on the outside. But I can use what I look like on the outside, or use my body, use my skin, use my arms and legs and flesh, and that to tell the stories about who I am on the inside. And it's such a so being able to perform with my body is so powerful for me, because we live normally every day so judged. What are you wearing? Who designed it? Where do you live? How good is your house? What car do you drive? Blah blah. All of these external things put us into a box, and people judge us.
This seems to be all the fuel to all your different creative processes that you have throughout your life and your journey. So you've done your chalk, you've done your painting, you're going into, a bit more of the show and the theatre side with burlesque and the life modelling. And then, I know, but for the listeners that don't, you did start doing performance art.
Yes.
And that's what you were doing, correct me if I'm wrong, on the burlesque stage.
Yeah.
Now, for those that are listening that haven't seen any of your photos or videos, what does your performance art look like? What does it entail?
Yeah. Okay. So the performance art is nude. And the wonderful thing is that the more I've got into the art scene, the more nude I'm able to get.
We're embracing the nude now, aren't we?
It's full nude, and it's so liberating. So when I started, there's obviously a lot of nudity laws and rules and stuff you have to abide by, and don't get your nipples out, or the hellhole will open and suck everybody down into it. So I perform naked. I have very specific costumes or props which are designed to tell a story. So there's no words generally in my performances.
Do you have like background music?
Yeah,
something
so
happening?
when I'm performing just for myself, I have music that is everything is symbolic.
Okay.
So the movement is all symbolic. The costumes and props are all symbolic. The music is symbolic. Everything is there designed to tell a story, and the stories are about violence against women, abusive relationships, domestic violence. It's about women losing their power and being destroyed, and then having to find the strength within to pick themselves back up and keep going. And so the colors that I paint with, the processes I go through, the audience participation is all about telling the story of women being abused and destroyed and then having to rebuild their lives. So
very powerful.
Very powerful, very sensual still in aspects, very confronting, very beautiful, very layered, very emotional. I have people crying a lot during my shows. Very open, very raw, very empowering. Yeah,
definitely. And so the first time that you actually did your own performance art with the paint, because it's a paint and a canvas as well, isn't it?
Yes.
Along with the props and the
Yeah,
lights.
so
So it's a whole process to develop this artwork on stage.
Yeah, so the whole intention is to paint a self-portrait on stage. And the whole story leads up to painting this painting. And the process is about being an artist, an artwork, and the art making process all at one time, so that I stop being myself, and and the art itself and the art process itself becomes the artist. And every performance is improvised, nothing's except for the theme and the props and the kind of key points that I know I want to hit.
I'm just going to go
everything,
with the movement,
the
participation of the audience,
whatever happens, where the paint is flowing on my body, what colors it creates by itself. If I feel like it needs to be faster or slower, sometimes the paint runs really fast, sometimes the paint runs really slow. Like it's about 100% being in the moment, in the process. And whatever happens, you have to just let it happen. If the artwork looks like a person, that's great. If it looks like a big mess, that's whatever happens. So it's very much a process of me and myself having to allow the process to be the process. And for somebody who draws incredibly realistically and so controlled and so traditionally talented, that process as well was a huge process of letting go for me as well. So the painting process, totally different to my drawing. And each performance is a healing. It's almost like going through my own self-healing work, except I'm doing it on stage in front of a whole bunch of people, and they're just watching me having to like heal every time I'm on stage. A little bit of healing, a little bit of healing, a little bit of healing. And I just I'm very lucky to be able to do that with other people, but it is a process of me having to let go, having to just accept whatever happens on stage. And, you know, whatever happens in life, whatever's happening in my life at that point, I have to just accept it, go with the flow, literally, and move on. And the process of the painting is very different and liberating and freeing and confronting. Even for me, you know, I have to say, like, is this good art? What is good art? What is not good art? Doesn't matter, because it's not the point. The point is not. I think also it's, you know, like, people only see the output. So the paintings, when there's a really beautiful club of people who've seen me perform, and when you look at the painting at the end, like, it's posted on LinkedIn, or not LinkedIn, Instagram, thank you. LinkedIn. God, Instagram can't even cope with it.
Imagine that.
Oh my God. God, I'd be arrested. Instagram. So when people just see only the painting on Instagram, it looks like a mess. It looks like, oh my God, my child could do that. But then there's this little secret club of people who watched that painting be painted and who know what that painting is and what the painting means and where it came from and what I went through to paint it. And
the art isn't just the painting.
No.
The art is the whole performance.
It's the whole performance. It's the story. It's the conversations that happened. It's the night. It's the event. It's the pub that we were in. It's this whole secret little world. And when you look at the painting, it's like, I was there. I saw that. Oh my God, she did this, she did that. And generally there's not that many films and stuff of the performances online. There's a few, but I'm pretty careful. I don't promote myself because a lot of it so far is about my own healing process. I have to still deal with my own fears around rejection and moving my art into like a professional enterprise. There's so many fears and blockages I have around that. Right now, I perform like with my community, with my friends, with my connections in these little ground spaces, in these underground events, in these secret things, and we rebel against society and we do stuff, and people are weirded out, and it's so crazy and it's so great and so freeing and so amazing, and like fuck social media and like society and all of this. And you know, I don't have to make money from it because we're just making art, and it's like the 1920s French art world, and we're all just hanging out, like being bohemians, and it's just the best, and I love it, and it's so freeing, and we don't make any money, and really I don't have followers. It's so liberating. It's so great. And when people look at it and they're like, that's what you paint? And I'm like, if only you knew of our secret club. And you really have to let it go. Like, you have to let go of like, I make amazing art and look how amazing it is, and my art is so amazing and I have 1 million followers, and I'm like, who cares? Who cares if they get it? Who cares if they don't? I know. It's like when people are like, oh my God, you are this, and you're like, well, I know I'm not this, and you can have whatever thoughts you want about me. It doesn't matter to me because I know what's happening behind the scenes, and those people who are my people know my art. And sure, like, I want to perform at galleries, and I'd love to be able to speak and have a bigger platform to share my messages. But then also, like, right now, I'm just loving being a weirdo.
Loving the journey.
Being naked and challenging people's perceptions of what being naked is. Challenging people's perceptions of what being naked in public and on stage, and this whole erotic and the sensual and the sexual and the ownership of the body and the ownership of myself. And like, I am literally, like, generally the only naked person in the room. Like, the bands I perform with are not naked, or I'm backstage and I'm completely naked, like totally 100% naked. And like, we're just like, how was your week? Oh, what did you do? Like,
are you feeling a lot more comfortable in your skin now?
Yeah.
As opposed to the first time, you know, in the closet in burlesque.
Yeah.
Going out on your life modeling, you seem to be like even as you're talking, you seem to be embracing it.
Yeah, I
Like, you
definitely,
still get nervous, like you said before,
yeah.
but
I get nervous because I'm still pushing my own boundaries.
yeah,
So, each performance is one step forward.
yeah,
So the first time that I performed was in comparison very safe to like the what I do now. Um, like now out of context, like without seeing the shows, I have like a huge 30 centimeter long pencil that is like a 5 centimeter diameter that I insert into my vagina and draw.
wow,
Yeah, so
yeah,
I paint, or have a paintbrush with a really big thick base up there, and I'll paint with that, or like I'm covered in chains, and I invite people to try and unlock the chains from my body, or I'm in a cage and I have to try and get
wow.
out of the cage, or
How
my
do you come up with all these ideas? Like the first, like even the first time that you
yeah,
went to perform, how did you know? Okay, I'm going to be nude and I'm going to do this, and like this is the kind of concept of what I want to go. But then each time you go on there, like you said, I know you improvise a lot, but there's obviously some thought process to how you came up with this idea of this
yeah,
nude live performance artwork and all
yeah.
the props you use and colors.
So it mostly comes from meditation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the very first performance was in response. A lot of it is trying to process trauma.
Yeah.
So, I have a lot of difficult things that happened throughout my life. Went through a lot of challenging situations. My mental breakdown was a huge part of my life,
Is
and
that how like the chains and like becoming free and
yes,
things
yeah,
like that come into play? So props like that where it's really like you said before,
restrictive.
yeah, and it's symbolic of
Yes,
being restrained and then being free and
yes, yeah,
things like that. That's
yeah.
how you get those ideas through the
It's all
meditation
about,
and
yeah,
putting
what
it all together.
um it's about what do I feel and
Mm.
what does that feeling look like? What color is that feeling? What does
Yeah.
it feel like? Where does it feel in my body? Where where does it where is it sitting? Where do I have to
Mm.
heal this thing that's happening? So my first performance was called My Brain is Trying to Kill Me, and it was part of an exhibition. When I had my mental breakdown, I had uh it was a terrifying, terrifying experience, and I knew that it was going to end in me taking my life. That was something I knew was going to happen, and I couldn't stop it from happening. And every day was me trying not to do that. I had 2 young kids. My marriage was breaking down. It was a very challenging time, and then my brain just broke apart, and it was like living in 2 different brains. I had one brain that was controlling my body, and my conscious thoughts, and everything that I was doing. This brain was like taking over, and then
Mm.
I was inside my brain watching all of this happening and not being able to stop it. I just could I that my body was doing this, I think, was going into panic attacks all of the time. I couldn't stop it. And panic attacks are terrifying. It's literal terror, and you can't stop yourself. Like you can't get out of them. They're absolute. I don't wish them on anybody. It was the most terrifying, exhausting period of my life. And I was just very lucky. The day that it I hit rock bottom was I knew that that was it. I couldn't keep going. I was just very lucky at that time that my mum and dad intervened. They got me to a hospital in time. I had an incredible ambulance officer who stayed with me during the whole period, didn't leave me alone. Um, and then when I was at the hospital, I was connected with an incredible emergency mental health person who spoke to me, and she said, like, um, so the ambulance officer said to me, "You're going to be okay, and you can totally do this on your own. You can survive this." Um, and then the mental health woman in the emergency mental health woman in the hospital was like, "What are you doing here? What are you even doing here? You're the strongest person I know. Like, you can get through this." And hearing these words, like, "You're so strong," like, such a disconnect to me. Like, I literally was not going to get through this.
Yeah.
Um, it was that was it. Like that, if my parents hadn't turned up when they had, the next step was to not be here anymore, and I was very, very lucky. But the process as well made me realize how much we hide our mental health publicly. Like when I was having panic attacks in the hospital in emergency, it terrified everybody around me because they thought I was having a heart attack, or they thought I couldn't breathe, because that's what it looks like. You literally look like you're going to die. Like you can't breathe, you can't get air in, you're clutching your chest, everything's not working. And it's terrifying. It's terrifying for other people. And what I wanted to do was share that publicly. And so my first performance, which was My Brain is Trying to Kill Me, I literally stood there naked on stage. I had an apron on as an artist, and I simulated and went through a panic attack on stage in front of the audience. And each stage of the panic attack had a color, and then I just covered my body in the paint. And I had a beautiful friend, Michael Wheatley, who performed with me music. It was all improvised. He was incredibly supportive. Like I have so much gratitude and thanks and love for him, and to go through the process with me. And the audience was invited to draw as well on paper as I went through the process. And so we had this beautiful community sharing this experience of a panic attack on stage. And afterwards, I had people come up to me and say, my sister had panic attacks and I didn't know how to help her, and I'm so grateful that I was able to go through this process with you. Or I have panic attacks all the time, and nobody understands, and I feel like you understand, and and now I don't feel as alone, or I'm so glad I can share this process with you. Or there was so much gratitude and connection and shared experiences, and
It starts to like community and
yeah,
belonging and
yeah, and not being alone. And so sharing these experiences became such an important part of the process. So, and at every show that I perform at, I always have people come up to me, or I'm able to talk to women who are like, "Oh my God, seeing you on stage and knowing you're a mom, so empowering for me." It or I've gone through a bad relationship, or I was abused, or I've gone through this as well, and I feel like your art, I was able to connect with it. Or I feel, or I was crying and I was able to, I felt this with you, or I felt this process with you. And so art becomes a conduit for connection, which is really safe. And we don't have to talk about it, but we can share the emotions together, and we can go through the process together. And because there's no boundary, there's no barriers, that I'm performing with the audience, in the audience. It's a community and a connection, and it's so empowering. It's so special. It needs to be protected. It's so honest and raw and vulnerable, and it's something that you just don't have in normal everyday life.
Yeah.
So that's what it is.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's so beautiful.
Is performance art the only art that you're currently exploring and doing, or do you still do a lot of chalk and drawing?
Yeah, I still do my chalk drawings. They're all of my art practices are healing. So my chalk drawings will take 20 hours to draw.
Wow.
Yeah, or more, depending. And
do you kind of set aside time to do it all, or do you just kind of, I feel like I need to draw and I just draw?
I have to set the time aside because because of my other commitments. I'm still a single mom, and
Life's just chaotic and hectic.
It absolutely has to be a habit. But if I don't draw, then my mental health gets worse and worse and worse. my psychologist, my old psychologist, just retired, um, said to me, used to say, like, if I hadn't been to see him for a while, the first thing he would say when I saw him was like, "When's the last time you draw?" Yeah. "When's the last time you made art?" And he's like, "Well, why are you here? You know how to fix yourself." So yeah, I have to set the time aside. It has to be a habit. So my chalk drawings are always, like they're more practice. They're more like just they're beautiful, relaxing, meditative. I don't think. I listen to music. It just goes into flow state. Then I have another drawing style, which is more illustrative line drawing, which are my hypnosis drawings. So they were started as a way to journal without writing words, because the words were okay, but I found them challenging to write. Whereas I could go into like a meditative or hypnosis state. And the rules that I set for myself are that I can't think about what I'm going to draw. I have to draw whatever comes into my head without question. And like you just have to sit and draw the images and the visuals that come into your head. So they're beautiful, symbolic, surrealist, and they always end up representing like deep problems or emotional blockages that I'm going through at the time.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And
That's really interesting. I've never heard of that before.
They're so healing, challenging, and because it's a process of letting go. It's a process of accepting whatever thoughts are happening in your head at the time and going through the process and not judging them. And being in this moment, and you're looking at this picture like, what is this? Where is this going? And you're just like, well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where it's going. It's a process of just being in it and going through it. So on a scale of like controlled to like wild, like my chalk drawings would be at the controlled, deliberate, planned, and executed practice. And then in the middle, the hypnosis drawings are a lot more fluid and about practicing being in flow, being in a state of acceptance and letting things just happen and evolve. And then my performance art is 100% about improvisation, having a theme and just letting it unfold and accepting whatever happens is what happens, and like 100% vulnerability and 100% just let it be. And each of those are like a practice in like technical to self mental health control, state of mind, mindfulness, I guess, or mindset. So and it all that would be what my creative process is. And then a little bit with the performance art goes into like when I'm not performing or don't have somewhere to perform, how do I keep that going
How
outside
often do
of
you
that?
perform?
Not often, because I don't put it out, like I don't push it myself. It's always like an invitation through someone else.
Do you have anything coming up at all?
I'm performing early next year with a burlesque show in Newcastle, and I'm working on 2 exhibitions with a friend of mine who's a writer. And so she'll be writing in response to what I'm drawing and performing, and I'll be performing and drawing in response to what she's writing. So it'll be a beautiful
Definitely keep us keep the listeners updated.
Definitely,
where they can find that. That sounds very interesting.
Yeah, it is. It should be pretty exciting.
We've talked quite a bit about the lows and how you came through it with your art, but can you give me like 3 examples of some highlights of your journey and some really key moments?
Yeah, I can. I mean, everything is a high. Every time I perform is a high. I think the very first performance I did was a high. That was incredibly liberating and defined parts of myself that I didn't even know existed.
What about the community you found?
Definitely. The community is so important and inspiring and changed my life. And I've got some incredible people in my life as a result of that. And I wouldn't be here without them. being able to perform like with such diverse artists, I think that's a huge high. Like I've performed with a friend of
Yeah.
mine who creates Edgar Allan Poe inspired shows, and like it's so powerful and liberating. You know, she's such an incredible actress. And you know, it's so like, and it shapes the way you perform in a little different way, you know, because you're responding within the context. Or if I'm performing with my friend who's a experimental musician, and it's really gothic and heavy metal and like just absolutely not my normal scene, and like it shapes the way I perform, and like it explores another part of who I am as a person, and that's a really big high. And yeah, being able to go on tour around Australia with like one of the burlesque productions, that was a huge high. You know,
That's unreal.
yeah. The first time I did a nude photo shoot,
That's on my list too. I
yeah,
do want to try that.
absolutely recommend it.
I think that would be my like dipping the toe in the water. I don't think I could ever get up on stage, but you know, a photo shoot where it can be a little bit expressive, a little bit classy. You can,
Yep,
you know, experiment, and it's just you and maybe that one other person, or maybe
yep,
I might have a support person there to try
yeah,
and cheer me on. You know.
yeah,
But you know,
100%.
keeping it small, I think that would be my first kind of step in the
Oh, well, I'll
nude world.
100% be your support person and get it happening. I'm 100% in support of that. That would be, it's so liberating.
And what
Yeah.
about those artists who are listening that want to reach out to some of these communities? Maybe they're little closet artists, maybe they're just drawing at home and they want to reach out to these communities that we've spoken about that have given you so much development in your art creation
Yeah.
and journey. Where would you suggest they go and look, and how do you find these people?
Yeah. Oh my God. I mean, it's hard in a way because we're all like hidden in the underground, but definitely start going to exhibitions, start looking at your art groups or art community pages, your local art galleries, and going to exhibitions, self-run exhibitions.
Okay.
Go to I mean, like, there's so many burlesque groups. Go to life drawing classes. I'd 100%. Oh my God, the amazing people that you meet at life drawing is just like some of my favorite people are at life drawing. Some of the most influential people in my life go to life drawing. It's like 100% go to life drawing classes.
Even if you can't draw?
Oh,
Like, I can't
100%.
draw. Can I go?
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. I mean, bring a paper and pencil because it's a bit weird if you don't draw, but just incredible creatives. And then you'll meet somebody who knows somebody, or, you know,
Yeah.
and who'll introduce you to somebody
It's
that
all about the networking
it's all
as
about,
well, and getting out
yeah,
there. Yeah.
yeah, just starting with one thing. I think start by drawing or performing or creating. Start by creating one thing and then show someone, put it out there. Find somebody else who's doing something similar to you. Reach out, connect with them. Don't focus too much on yourself. Definitely focus on community and building friendships and networks. I think being authentic. I think we live in a society which is very I focused, and really like how you support your community is how much your community will support you back. And
I
yeah,
love that. That's
yeah,
great.
I
I
think
agree.
just be yourself and go make friends. I think that's
Extend that arm out. And,
yeah.
you know, all it takes sometimes. Hi, how was your day?
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh, I love
Like
what
if
you
they go to
did.
if they go to the new class. Hi, I'm blah blah blah. Have you been here before?
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's a
My
really
first
good
time.
reminder.
What have I experienced? What am I in
Yeah,
for?
that's right. Just be open to it. I think don't go in with any expectations. I think my performance art really taught me like just go with the flow. Whatever happens, just go with it. Don't try and force it. Don't try and be anything. But also like when you are in the moment and you are in that flow, you do welcome a lot more opportunities because you're more open to what's happening around you rather than being like, I need an exhibition and I need to do this. This means I have to talk only to art galleries and I can't do anything else and blah, blah, blah. 99% of my art performances are in pubs in the city. Like the number of pubs I have been naked in Sydney is like
And allowed to be
allowed
naked
to
in.
be naked.
Okay, if anyone else goes and gets naked in a pub, you'll get kicked out for
That's
sure.
right.
Only Shannon can do it.
Yeah.
Okay?
But it's just so funny, like, and I love that. I love that, like, most of the art, I'm like bringing art to the masses. Like,
Yeah.
most people who I perform in front of have never seen art before. And so you're bringing them something that, like, totally changes their experience. And that's one of the best things.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time today and coming on. Hopefully we can get you on another time, figure out something else.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. I would love to.